That way you can make sure you hang on. No, no, this is a new one. Yeah, it's a new one. The first one's just like an extra. It's like free. Uh, man, my fingers still saying work. Hey, you got me under too much pressure. I think there's two there. I think there's two there, Helen. Yeah. Hey, sometimes you just get slow. If you're old like me, you get slow. Uh, yeah. Yeah, you can finish passing out. Okay. Hopefully. Oh, I had Sister Hayes' paper. First thing she says, this says attitude. I don't want that. Uh, hey, you gotta love it. Not that anybody in my house would ever have attitude. Hey, it is what it is, right? So you sometimes you just have to do what you have to do. I just laugh. But, hopefully some more come in. If not, Brother Hay is glad that you're here. And if you're watching online, we just want to say welcome. And I want to talk about the attitude paper first for just a second. This is an old handout. I've had it in my stuff for a very, very long time. And every once in a while, how many know it's good to do your first works over? Yep. And it's kind of funny. I kind of wanted to veer off of talking about end times for a little bit because sometimes you get on those subjects and it kind of overpowers everybody a little bit. It can become a little nerve wracking sometimes. And sometimes we need a break. But this little paper here is uh, anybody besides me know who Charles Swindell is? Yeah, he was a Baptist preacher and a really good preacher. He was on TV for I don't know, probably 100 years. No, not that long, not that long, but a long time anyway. And he was on TV for quite a while. And if Brother Singletary was here, we need to remember him in prayer. I think he has one more week working out of town. And remember Wanda, she's not here tonight either. Remember all of them that are a lot of people are missing tonight. Yeah, Fred's not here, so I remember him. Uh, Sometimes people, when we get older, fall asleep when we don't wake up until after church is over. And sometimes I'll see him on Sunday and go, well, we were coming, but we fell asleep. It's like, no, I don't know if they're telling me the truth. No, I'm just kidding. But uh, this is just a little thing. You can take it and it's just something to kind of stick in your Bible. And it's one of those things, hopefully it'll help you. But I like to use people that as references that have been in the ministry for a long time. One of the guys I like is, of course, Dr. Jeremiah, the Church of Christ guy. There's several authors that Brother Hay uses, and almost all of them are getting up there in age. But how many know it's a good thing when you can survive in the ministry for 50 or 60 years? It's sort of like Brother Hay always tells you, if you're having marital problems, don't go get your advice from somebody who's been married 7 times. Okay? Just don't. I don't even care if they're a counselor. Just don't go there. Okay? How many know you're going to get probably some bad advice? Because obviously, if they had the answer, they wouldn't have been married and divorced 7 times. So when I think about pastors and people whose books Brother Hay reads. I read a lot of older authors and people that have been in ministry for a long, long time, and even some of the older authors that Brother Hay reads. And it's kind of interesting, but a lot of people don't really know about some of the great revivals. And I've been thinking about this for the last few weeks. We got to start teaching our kids about church heroes. Do you know, I guarantee you, if we start asking our kids about great missionaries, a lot of them aren't going to know any of them. They're not going to know who they were or what they did, whether it's George Mueller, who all those guys are, people like that that were great men of faith. And so I just like, but here's what it says. It says, the longer I live, the more I realize the impact of attitude on life. Attitude to me is more important than facts, more important than the past, than education, than money, than circumstances, than failures, than success, than what other people think or say or do. Wow, that's a lot of stuff, huh? But think about that. It is more important than appearance, giftedness, or skill. It will make or break a company, a church, a home. And the remarkable thing is, we have a choice every day regarding the attitude we will embrace for that day. We can't change our past. We cannot change the fact that people will act in a certain way. Man, how many know how true that is? Just think about that for just a minute. We cannot change the inevitable. When I was at my uh, doctor today in Lubbock, I say to myself, man, it's tough when you get older. How many know things that go on once you get past 70, you start thinking, whoa, wait a minute. I never thought I'd be here. Matter of fact, the way Brother Hay lived, I never thought I'd make it 25. We'll just leave it there. Okay. But the only thing we can do is play on the one string we have. And think about this, and that is our attitude. I'm convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it. And so it is with you. Now, I want you to think about that for a minute. How many know there's a lot of things as we get started tonight that we really can't change? And certain things are going to happen. I know Larry and Helen went somewhere the other day and they called me, hey, man, there's an accident out here on Florida Highway. Had called cops. And they had just got home sitting on their porch. Now, here's the thing. All the people involved in the accident, do you think that was their plan for the day? I'm sure it wasn't. But how many know how you react to that is going to determine the impact it has in your life? And there's a lot of things in life that we can't really change. And so I look at those kind of things and I begin to think in my own mind. And Charles Swindoll, uh, he's one of those guys when he was teaching and was preaching and was involved in the ministry heavily. One of the things that he said is that sometimes God puts people on a shelf. And you say, why would God do that? How many know that sometimes we have to be readjusted? Sometimes God has a plan. Sometimes we have to be kind of pointed in a different direction. But here's what he always used to say. But all the little nice people in church keep trying to pull them off the shelf. And God says, wait a minute, I'm not ready for them yet. And they're not ready. And so what I've learned over the years is as you get a little bit older and you grow through some things and you grow a little bit, you'll find out that at the end of the day, if you really, really think about it, 90% is probably your attitude on what you're going to do. Have you ever got up and just been mad when you woke up? What kind of day did you have? You get up and you're like, whoa, right? And it's so funny. I told Sister Ray the other night, I had this crazy dream, and Brother Hay hardly ever dreams. But if I have a dream, I always try to remember my dream because it's usually something important. If I remember my dream, I pay attention. Does that make sense? I do believe God talks to us like that. I do. It's just you take it for whatever you want. It doesn't matter, Brother Hay. I just believe that way. But anyway, I had this dream, and in my dream, I was working, imagine that, on something electrical, and I tweaked my back, Brother Randy. When I woke up, I don't know how long from when my dream ended till I woke up. But anyway, when I woke up, I couldn't move. I tweaked my back. I don't know how I did it, but neither one of my legs were working. I told Sister Hay, I said, oh, this is not cool. And I thought about it, and so you get up, and then all of a sudden you have to make a decision, right? You can let that ruin your whole day if you want to, but sometimes we have to understand that No circumstances should control us. We should be allowing God to be in control. Now, that's easy to preach, easy to teach. That's why I give you a little paper, stick it in your Bible or stick it somewhere at home. So if you're having a bad day, now if you got little ones, the little ones could change our attitude quick, right? How many know teenagers can? Brandon's just at that age now. He's about ready to break into that group. Hopefully, he'll live through it. And uh, yeah, adult kids, never mind. Yeah. And part of it is, have you ever noticed that sometimes you can tell that somebody's mostly in trouble because their attitude's bad? If you get up and go to school and you're teaching, whether I know Don and Michael, I mean Don and Sarah, we do need to pray for them. End of the year is hard. The kids are hard. They get out kind of crazy. They want to be out for the summer. They're not listening. It's just the end of the school year. I used to think when I was teaching those years, I used to think, man, and yeah, but what I did is I made sure that I had everything that we were supposed to do done about 3 weeks before school got out. That way, I didn't have to really force anything in the last 3 weeks with them because I promise you, all they're going to do is cause you to have a bad attitude. And if you get a bad attitude, it causes them to have a bad attitude. And how many know it just goes from there? And a lot of truth is that is in the church. A lot of times in the church, we can have a bad attitude and say, well, nobody's doing anything. Okay. I always like to think, but what are we doing? What am I doing? I'm very cautious with those kind of things. And I'm not going to lie to you. Every once in a while, everybody has a bad attitude, and we have to have it adjusted. I had to take some paint back to Lowe's the other day, and uh, Jorge was pretty upset. When you spend like $65, $70 for a gallon of paint, you expect it to work, right? And this paint was bad, and I fought with it, and I finally got aggravated to the point I said, "Okay, I'm done. I'm taking this back." And the poor little girl at the little place where you take the paint back, she said, "Well, you used too much of this. I can't take this back." At first, I was going to have a bad attitude. I really was. I mean, all of a sudden, I'm thinking, well, I caught myself. I said, okay. I said, honey, best for you to just go ahead and call your manager now, and I'll deal with him. I said, because I know you're only telling me what they tell you to tell me, but you just call him. And so, him and I have this little discussion, and they give me a gallon of paint, by the way. And but what's so funny is he told me, he says, okay, take it over there and they'll replace it because they have to scan in the color. Because Sister A, she picks all these weird colors. But anyway, and so she picked it. So I had to take it over there. And so the other girl, I shouldn't call him little, but to brother, hey, when you get past 70, they all look little to me. But anyway, I get over there. The first thing she said to me was, well, we can't replace this paint. I said, I've already had that discussion and it's okay. I just need you to mix me another gallon of paint. and and when I went back to the place to check out and they rang it up and they didn't charge me for it. And I could tell that little girl's feelings was hurt. And I told her, I said, listen, this had nothing to do with you. I said, I promise you, that's how come I didn't raise my voice, why I didn't get angry with you. I know you're just following the company line. I said, but you know something? You always have to remember there are exceptions to every rule, right? You just have to know that. And here's Brother Hayes saying, I happen to know their guarantee over there. They guarantee that stuff. And you know what? Sometimes you got to hold their feet to the fire. But just imagine Brother Hay would have just got mad and left that place. I would have been having a bad day for a long time. And I would have had the bad attitude, and I'd been one with the problem. Yeah, and I still wouldn't have had the right paint. I had to go buy some somewhere else. That would have even been worse because then I'd had to repaint all that I did. But anyway, I just want you to think about attitude, and I want you to think about those things. You can look at somebody else. How many know how easy it is to nitpick somebody else's life? How hard is it to take care of yourself? We see faults in other people. We don't see our shortcomings. And, I'm just one of those kind of guys. Right now, I know our country is in bad shape, and if you're watching by YouTube or Facebook, whatever, just tell bro, hey, I don't care about your politics. I really honestly don't. That's not a brother hey thing. I only care about your relationship with the Lord. But you know what cracks me up? What really gets me more than anything else? Well, they did it first, or it's their fault. And I just want you to go with me all the way back to the Garden of Eden. And think about what happened. Poor Eve got deceived. Let's not kid anybody. She got deceived. That's what God's word says. That the enemy was slick. He was I almost did that Bible study this time. I have one on that. But anyway, we know that she got deceived, right? But here's the important part. Adam, when God's questioning Adam, he's like, "This is not my fault. It's that woman you give me." So I want you to know this started a long time ago. You got to read the whole scripture. Yeah, he did. Okay. Yeah, and yeah, always blame it on somebody else. But here's one thing that I want you to always remember. Adam made a choice. He made a choice. He couldn't say he was deceived because he wasn't. He knew he wasn't supposed to do it. And guess what? The enemy didn't try to deceive Adam. He only appealed to Eve. He made it worse on Adam because Eve had more influence on him than Satan would have. Adam probably looked at Satan and said, I don't think so, right? Because he wasn't deceived. But it doesn't matter what Brother Hay is getting at. It don't matter anything in life. Don't be blaming other people. Look and see what you are doing. Okay? You want the church to grow? Do your part. You want to get closer to God? You got to do your part in your life. Nobody can magically get you there. I wish that was the case, or hey, wishes that I could magically get people there. And over all the years that I've been doing this, 50 plus years now, so many times people say, bro, hey, just give me a list and I'll do everything on your list. And I always tell them the same thing. I can't give you a list, okay, because everyone's in a different place. I can tell you what God's dealt with me on, but that might not be the same as what he's dealing with you. And the things that the enemy will use in my life are not going to be the same things that he might use against you. Okay. And so what Brother is getting at, think about your attitude and just I like I like him because this when he wrote this little paper, I've had this thing stuck back probably the last 30 years I've had that. And I always every once in a while I'll run across it when I'm going through my stuff and getting the Bible study ready and I'll go, oh man, I need to share this with people again and kind of put it out there because it really is important to realize even in church we had a great service and a couple Sundays ago when we had that great service. How many know? Let's not let that be the last one. The reason we had a great service is people checked their attitude. And you have to check your attitude in order for God to move. You got to forget about all that stuff that's going on in your life. You got to forget about all the problems. And you got to forget all the aggravating people that you run across, right? And and that's hard to do. And so if you do that, you'll be a whole lot better off. Okay. That was free. I didn't even charge you all for that. That pretty good? That's just a little thing Brother Hay has. If you have a Bible, you can turn in it. We're going to be in Philippians chapter 2, verses 19 through 30. And we're we're here's how the title of this is. We're talking about models, but I have on my little paper there being a character versus having character. How many know there are a lot of characters out there? Would you agree with me? How many have characters in your family? I was going to say how many are married to characters, but I didn't want to go that far. Sister A's watching me. I used to get away with more when she was teaching the little kids. I gotta be careful now. Yeah, she's watching. And but I just want you to think about this. It really is true. And you might not believe, Brother Hay, when I tell you this, but take it to the bank. You are a role model whether you want to be or not. Okay? You're either going to be a one for good or you're going to be one for something else. It's one of those kind of things. If you go and the cashier gives you back extra money in your change and you don't give it back, I promise you, if your kids are with you, you just give them part of who you are. And people say, well, brother, hey, no, you got to do the right thing. And so if you're teaching your kids to do the right thing, how many know you got to? And lots of times we like to talk good stories, but how much harder is it to live the right thing and do the right thing? Okay. And it's kind of like a doctor. You go to the doctor. How many know doctors can't heal you? God does the healing. Period. End of story. That's just the way it is. They can treat your symptoms. They can give you medicine. They make you feel better. They can do like they did to Sister A's sister. They can put stents in your arteries. They can do all those kind of things and make you feel a little bit better. But here's the bottom line. If you go and they put all these stents in and they give you a list of things you need to quit doing and you don't quit doing them, how many know no matter what they do, you're going to be in trouble? And Brother Michael was with me one time. We went and saw a guy that was coming to the church. He's gone now, so it doesn't matter. But he had open heart surgery. And this guy would not drink water. Period. End of story. Me and Michael were in there. The heart surgeon comes in, and the guy's like talking to the surgeon. Sometimes we should just have left those things, but they always told us, "No, you guys stay here." I think they wanted a witness, but I I kind of would have been on the doctor's side. But here's what he told the doctor. He told the doctor, "I don't drink water." And the doctor said, "You got to quit drinking sodas and you got to start drinking water." He said, "I'm not going to." Okay. And the doctor just simply told him, "Okay." And I kid you not, he sent his wife to the little machine to get Pepsi out of the machine for him to drink. And you're talking about a guy that's had open heart surgery, has all that stuff hooked up, right? He's just barely awake. And they've done all this stuff to fix him up. I'm not drinking the water. I don't care what you say. I'm drinking my Pepsi. And that's the way this is going to be. Yeah, they had the surgery the day before. Yeah, they did a bypass whole thing. And and I'll never forget, I thought of myself, but it goes, that's why I give you the attitude paper first, right? It's so you think about that. And as far as I know, that guy never did drink any water. Now, he wasn't with us very long after that. Yeah, because he's going to drink his Pepsi one way or the other. Well, okay. It's kind of what happens, right? And that's Brother Hayes' point. You know, ultimately, decisions about our life lie with us, and our decisions about our relationship with the Lord lie within our choice. And we have to understand that. And again, we can now. I saw him. It probably was 3 or 4 weeks later. He was walking up to AutoZone. I picked him up, give him a ride. He couldn't hardly breathe. He was almost as bad as he was before he had the bypass. And I told him, called him by name. I said, "Hey, did you ever start drinking any water?" Oh man, he went on a tirade. And I was like, "Okay." And I told him, I said, "Okay, sore subject. Change your subject here." I give him right up there. But think about it. Even being sick, even having all them issues, because his attitude was, "I'm going to do what I want, and I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what anybody thinks." Okay, now think about how many times in your life you've done something and wish you wouldn't have said it or wish you wouldn't have done it. So all these things start tying together. So let me get my Bible open here and turn to Philippians chapter 2, and we'll start there. And the first one we're talking about, sorry, I have to put things on. Kaylee, did you get them put in the computer, baby? Okay. All right, we'll start with verse 19. And it says, I hope in the Lord Jesus to send Timothy to you soon, that I also may be cheered when I receive news about you. Verse 20, I have no one else like him who takes a genuine interest in your welfare. Now, this is kind of cool, Brother Hay. Paul's looking at him and he's telling him why he's sending Timothy. Now, imagine if he's sending somebody and he says, hey, I'm sending this guy over there to you. You better give him a big offering. If you don't worry. He's going to have some choice words or something to make you feel bad, right? But here's what he said. He said he was sending Timothy because of his concern and interest in the Philippian people. How many want somebody who has your best interest in mind? How hard is it to have a conversation with somebody and you know they don't have your best interest in mind? Them poor girls over there at Lowe's, it wasn't their fault. They're just telling me what the company says. You think they have my best interest in mind? Absolutely not. Their interest was in keeping their job at Lowe's, right? And doing what the guy that's in charge that pays their paycheck, what he says or she says to do. This case, the manager was a guy. I was so glad because sometimes I don't deal with ladies very well. And nothing personal. It's just one of them kind of things. And sometimes I'll tell you why. Because see, men have respect for each other. And sometimes ladies, when they're in charge over something, they're going to have a different attitude towards a guy. I'm just telling you, you take it for whatever it's worth. That's just a Brother Hay experience. It's not always true. There are a lot of ladies that have respect for people, and I'm not saying that all people are like that, but some people, when they get in a power position, how many know they got to make up for all the people that were men that were mean to them? That's all Brother Hay's going to say. It kind of one of those deals. And so sometimes the only reason I say that is has nothing to do with them being a woman, it has to do with the attitude they're going to give me. And how many know when you get a certain attitude, you have to pray through not to give the attitude back? I'm just one of those kind of people. I'll respect anybody as long as they're respectful. Does that make sense? And I will tell you, even when I was in the military, yeah, when I got to a little bit higher position in certain things, and I had a guy come in and cuss me out one time, and I just stood up behind my desk. I said, "Hey, see that door?" He said, "Who you talking to?" I said, "I'm talking to you." And of course, then I got a little closer to him. I said, "Until you learn how to talk to people, you can hit that door. Our conversation's over." And you know what? I hate to say it, it was an officer, a lieutenant, and a master sergeant, and they left. And it was so funny because you've been around the AMU, so you know how break rooms are, right? And the guys don't have any jobs. They're all sitting in there, so they're watching this. They're watching this whole thing. Now, all the people in the break room, I swear, they doubled in population just a little bit. In about 15 minutes, somebody came back. This time, it was a chief and a captain. And I was like, oh man. And you could just see all the guys' faces, like, this is going to be good. And so the first thing that guy did, I kid you not, he walked in my office, started cussing me out. And I said, excuse me, sir, you see that door? If you can't talk to me, you need to hit that door because I'm not talking to you. And oh, by the way, I don't care who you bring next. The answer's still no. And at that point in time, how many know Brother Hay was probably in a lot of trouble? No doubt about it. If you've been in the military, when they bring a chief and a captain, of course, I was a senior, so I wasn't too worried. But I was like, okay, and plus I'm in charge anyway, so what are you going to do? Well, they could take your birthday, but we'll leave that one alone for another time. But I'll never forget. Here's the deal. I stood up, I stood my ground. They left. and they went around the corner to where the colonel was, my boss. Okay. I could hear some loud voices in the room. How many know they? I think they do that on purpose. When I used to be in the room with the colonel when I was running the squadron as like the acting chief, I remember thinking, man, we got to keep our voices low because everybody could hear everything. Now that crowd out there in AMU is really huge. They're waiting for the colonel to come get me. But those two didn't come back. Just my boss did. My boss comes in and he shut the door. Nobody else had shut the door. But you know what? He didn't cuss at me. And you know what happened? Those guys went in there and told him I cussed him out. I looked him right in the eye. I said, sir, of course I'm standing up then because this is all six. It don't matter what your rank is at that point in time. You better be doing the right thing because they have the power to take your stripes, take your money. They got a lot of power. Okay, they're the guy. And I'm standing up and I'm talking to him. I said, sir, how long have we worked together? And he told me, and I said, have you ever heard me cuss anybody out? He said, no. And I didn't think you did this time. And he asked me what was going on, and I told him. And you know what? He said, okay. And guess what? He went into that other room, and those two guys left. But here's the deal. If I had a rotten attitude every single day, and I cussed people out, and I treated people ugly, you see where Brother Hay is going with this? And I never did that because the people that I worked that I was responsible for that worked under me, I had their best interest in mind. Does that make sense? I'm not going to treat them ugly. I'm not going to cuss and swear at them and berate them in front of people. Were there times when I had to get after people? Oh, yeah. Some of those are kind of rough times. I said in my worst counseling session were with ladies too. But I always left my door open, so it was good. And they always sent them to me. I used to think, you guys are just wrong. But anyway, I raised enough girls, and Tanya tell you, I'm not mean to my girls. I try to respect them and treat them the way that you're supposed to. I don't make no difference between anybody when they're working, but attitude has a lot to do with it. And if somebody comes in and they start saying it's everybody else's fault, how many know I got to adjust their attitude before we can even fix the problem? Because if you're blaming everybody else, you're in trouble. And so here's my thing. In the church, again, we need to become closer to each other. But you need to become close to people that really care about you. Because there are always going to be people that take advantage of you. There's been times in our church when I've had to go to people and say, look, I know you're trying to help this person, but they're taking advantage of you. And sometimes you have to say this horrible word, no. And then what happens is because when you do certain things and then that person disrespects you, then guess what? You put everybody in the same category with that person. And we don't want to do that, right? So Paul is saying to the Philippians, look, I'm not sending somebody over there to you that's going to take advantage of you. I'm sending somebody that cares about you as people. And I think about it in the church. I promise Brother Michael has your best interest. He does his best. Now we're all human. We all kind of make mistakes. And the reason Paul held him in high regard is because of the fact that he cared for him and he could trust him. Okay, Kaylee, did you get 1 Corinthians 2:16 up there? Did you get that in there? Okay, that'll read it. I should have printed them out. Usually I do, but I didn't have time when I got back from Lubbock today. Oh yeah. Well, I didn't get home until almost time for church too, so it kind of gets you going. And and I think it's important though. And what I want to do is try to give you some scripture basis, so you don't think it's just brother. Hey, coming up with some of these things because I really do believe that they're important. It says, "For who has known the mind of the Lord that he may instruct him?" But we have the mind of Christ. In other words, Paul is one of these kind of guys that he picks up on some things, and Timothy was a person that he was trying to train. Now, as long as Brother Michael's worked with Brother Hay for a very, very, very long time, how many know he understands how I think about some things? Not everything, but some things. And one of the things, he still is an individual, so he has to have that. But here's where we agree is when we agree in Christ what we're doing. Does that make sense? So when Paul sees Timothy, he sees a person that has the mind of Christ that puts others before himself. Does that make sense to you? And I think a lot of times when we're talking about stuff, especially in the church and especially in our relationships, especially with dealing with things that are going on, you got to have the mind of Christ. That should cause us to have a unity. Okay? If you don't, then you're in trouble. And one of the reasons why our politics is so crazy right now is because they don't have anything that unites both people together. You know what I mean? They're just lined up. It's just, I'm on this side, you're on that side. Boom, that's just the way it is. And everything that person does is evil, everything I do is good. If you try to approach your relationship with other people with that kind of attitude, how many know you're in trouble? And I thought about this. It might be what we talked about in Sunday school. Can you imagine Jesus washing somebody's feet? I want you to think about that for a minute. We're talking about the Son of God, right? That's just about ready to die on Calvary's cross for us. But yet, there's no doubt that he definitely was the leader, first of all. But here's Brother Hayes' point. How many people have ever worked for a leader that would wash your feet? Boy, does that bring things into reality? Okay. So, yep, sometimes we do, right? But in order for them to wash your feet, how many know that act of humility, what that really means? That's kind of interesting, isn't it? And I think about that a whole lot. And it's not even about the washing of feet, as much as it is the fact that Jesus saw them and their need above his own. And the mind of Christ will put you in this place where you start thinking about others. And it's not about having your way all the time. And it's not about always being right. It's kind of funny. I used to have this poster up in my office at work, and it's probably not politically correct anymore. But anyway, it it was there's this poor cowboy, and his horse is dead, right? And there a lady standing there with her gun, and she's screaming at this cowboy, "It's mine! I shot it!" And here's the Cowboys' answer at the bottom. You know, they got the little bubble above her. At the bottom, he said, "Okay, you can have it. Just let me get my saddle." And that was kind of my little thing I used to keep in my office all the time. And because there's a lot of truth in that. I'm right, and it doesn't matter the evidence. How many know it's obvious to anybody that looks? It's a horse. It's got a saddle. Right? It's not your deer, it's not your moose, it's not your elk, it's a horse. That poor cowboy wasn't going to win that argument. I'm sorry that it was a lady and a cowboy. I don't know. I'm just in trouble with the ladies tonight. It's by accident. I don't really think that way, but it just kind of fell into place that way. Yeah, me too. And that's exactly it. And you might win the argument. Are you going to lose the person? But here's what's more important than losing the person. What if they lose their relationship with Christ because of your attitude? Boy, all those things, you might not feel the presence of God, but I always feel it when I talk that way because it always reminds me. Because our attitude, we get our attitude going, we have our mind made up. I always tell people, look, you need to figure out ways to add and not subtract, ways to include and not exclude. Does that make sense? Especially in the church. That's what the mind of Christ was. And I think about him washing the feet, and I think about that little poster. And I used to tell the guys sometimes, usually it was guys back then. We didn't have very many women on the flight line back in those days, and it was mostly guys that Brother Hay dealt with. And I used to tell them all the time because you get two people in there and they're arguing. How many know you got to be the referee? Okay. Have you ever had to do that, Leo? I know some things don't change. Okay. You can just say, babe, it's been that way since the beginning of time. When Larry was working on his crew, I guarantee there were people that got in arguments and he had to settle them. And I guarantee you that both people thought they were right. Yeah, turn it into a fundraiser, sell tickets, right? That would be funny. And so you look at that, right? And all of a sudden you're there and you've got to sell the conflict, and it's almost impossible. And Brother Michael will tell you, when we lost a bunch of people one time in the church, and we recovered from that real well. But I told him, when people get at odds with each other, you end up losing both sides and maybe some extras. And the best you can do is try to salvage as many as you can, because here's what the Bible says. The Bible says we're supposed to prefer one another over ourselves. And all of a sudden they come to church and their first statement is, well, as long as they're in church, I can't go to church here. And I always think about heaven. Hey, maybe Brother Hay just lives too far away sometimes. But when people start acting a certain way, I always think about, man, heaven's going to be interesting. I wonder, Brother Randy, if some of those people, when they get to heaven and they see somebody, I wonder if they're going to ask God to send them the opposite direction because that person's in heaven. Have you ever thought about that? We make those kind of statements all the time. People do it all the time, right? It's it's not a good statement to make, but people make them, right? And Brother Michael knows there's been a lot of times when we have poor Sister Irene here, people would tell us, hey, man, you need to tell her not to come to church. And I'm glad Brother Michael kept the same attitude I had. Hey, man, I understand what God's word says. It says, out of all the people you're supposed to protect, there's a certain group of people. It said, protect those that are widows, not the ones that are real young, because they'll get remarried. But the ones that aren't going to get remarried, basically, you become their protector. You become their source, their defenders, right? And it says to look out for the orphans. Can I just, if you're watching my Facebook, I want you to think about this. How many kids have parents, but they're still orphans? Have you ever thought about that? They got parents, but they're still orphans. You know, and some of them, when they come to church, they give you a big old hug, and you're like, whoa, that's too cool. And like little Zach, he's funny. He's kind of connected with Brother Michael, and it's okay with Brother Hay. You know how many times I tried to get that kid to get a haircut? I can't even count how many times. I go, Zach, you got to get a haircut, dude. I can't see your eyes. And then Michael offers to take him to get a haircut. Zach's all good with it. I'm like, oh, I see how this works, right? And I could have an attitude towards Michael. Ha! He's just trying to undercut me. Okay, listen. It's a good thing, right? But do you see what Borges trying to get at? We get in our corners, and we're going to be right at any cost. And I'd have them guys in there arguing. That's why I had that little thing on my wall. And I would tell them, I go, okay, which one of you's the cowboy? Which one's I'm going to get in trouble right away. The other shooter. How's that for politically correct? And they're both standing there, two people looking at you like, and I go, well, you're acting the same way. You're going to be right no matter what. Even if you could see there's a horse in there. How much do you got to ignore that you just shot a horse, especially when it's got a saddle? I really feel sorry because it doesn't say in the picture that the cowboy was on the horse. Actually, cowboy's braver than me, saying, "Hey man, can I at least get my saddle? You can have it." Doesn't say, right? And you know what usually happened most times? They might have been cussing, swearing at each other, acting silly. And all of a sudden, when you point out how silly they are, right? And this is Borges' thing. God tries to teach us through things in His Word and everyday life. And it's so hard to learn them lessons. And it goes back to what I told you. Sometimes God puts us up on a shelf for a while. And if brother, like I said, Brother Singletary was here, he'd tell you Charles Lindell would always say, "Yep," and all the dear hearts in church are taking them off when they need to be on the shelf for a while because maybe they need an attitude adjustment. Maybe they need to work through some things in their life, whatever the case might be. But I always have this picture in my mind because over the years, so many people would be acting so ugly. And then all of a sudden, when they stop to think, and in most cases, there was a grain in truth on both sides. And you know why Brother Hayes says that? Because that's how the enemy works. The other Bible study I was going to do talks about that, how the enemy, that's his job, is to divide and to separate and to pull people apart, to cause division, to get people against each other. That's his job. And you know, sometimes I've learned the hard way in life. Sometimes you have to pull yourself away from situations. Okay? You say, why are you telling us that, brother? Hey, because I want you to know that in God's word, He doesn't expect us to be doormats for anybody. You got to hear that. You know, I really have issues. And for you guys that are in here and you ladies too, when you're at home, you watch the commercials and watch how many of them betray the husband, the father, the dad, the man, and how they portray that person. Okay? And I look at those things, I pay so much attention to stuff like that because we have to raise the next generation of young men. We have to raise a group of people. And I tell Brandon this. Sometimes he gets pretty upset with Papa. But sometimes he has to learn some hard lessons. And I told him, I said, look, in the end, when Papa's not around, you're going to have to protect your mama. You're going to have to protect your Nana if she's still around. And Kaylee, the fossil. he, he calls her the fossil all the time. I feel so bad for Kaylee. What, baby? No. Yeah. But anyway, I always laugh. But, you know, I try to teach him that because all these commercials kind of aggravate Brother Hay. Because that subliminal message, anybody know what that is? Anybody remember when they used to do studies about this? Anybody in here? Well, I know you guys have probably been to drive-ins. I don't know if Michael and them have. Ever been to drive-ins? But it don't matter if you just go to a movie theater. During the commercials, believe it or not, there's messages in there. They're so fast that your conscious don't pick it up. Yeah, there's a reason why people go snack bar and buy popcorn. And there's a reason why they go get Cokes. Right? And I remember 60 Minutes used to run things on that all the time. And people don't understand because I promise you that there are people out there that do not have your best interest at heart. Oh, I don't doubt that at all. Yeah. And you think about I have to laugh. I know we're going to be out of time in a minute. I didn't get very far, but hopefully I got everything introduced. And it'll go faster next week. But I think about this all the time. Have you ever played a video game? I don't care what it is, solitaire, whatever. If you're not careful, all of a sudden you go like this and you look up and you've been there for 2 hours. And you don't even realize that you've been there. And it goes back to that algorithm. Okay. It goes back to that thing with social media a lot of times. It goes back to not even realizing. And here's the thing, the reason why that works is because there's instant reward. I got to beat that level. And 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 I know that I get in trouble. I play solitaire games in the morning for about 45 minutes, and there's like a couple of them I play, like the Sudoku and that, and I like them. But I literally took them off of my regular phone. You can click on this phone; they don't have any games on there, well, except for Roblox. But I didn't put that on there. Brandon did. We didn't have nothing else to play, so put on my phone. I promise you, I don't even know how to get into it. But anyway, but here's what I figured out: it don't matter who you are. If you're not careful, you'll look up and man, an hour and a half will be gone. I just got to get to that next level, right? I just got to beat that guy. Now, this goes all the way back. And of course, I get Brother Hay has ADHD. I know I do. Okay. My attention span is really short. I I'm one of them people. You know what? You got to get my attention. You got to keep me engaged because I I just can't do that other stuff, right? And I remember when my youngest brother Pat come to stay with us in Las Vegas, and Bubba, I think he was in sixth, seventh grade back then. Them guys would stay up all night playing Mario. I mean, literally all night. Of course, I worked out of town a lot, so I wasn't home to stop it. But when I was home, I kind of try my best to keep it in control. And I promise you that them two guys, what kept them playing those games was they had to save that little princess or whatever it was in that crazy game, right? Whatever it was. And they used to have this game called Contra. Anybody remember that one? And I still remember the code: up, up, down, down, left, right, whatever it was. Start, what? There you go. Michael still knows it. Yeah. So wait, I kid you not. So the only reason I knew about it is because my brother and my son, they play those video games and they'd always want me to play with them. That's why I know I have ADHD. So they get in there. Guess what? I get my guy, he's dead in just a few seconds. I ain't get through one or two levels. Boom, I'm out of there. An hour and a half later, they're still running that little guy through those levels. I'm like, they go, come on, don't you want to play with us? I said, I've been done with this a long time ago. I got stuff to do. But what kept them playing? Now, that was the original games. Think about what they have now. Yeah, they don't have clocks. Yep. Well, it used to be you put coins in the slot machines, but now they don't do that. They just got credits. But but do you know what is so funny about that? The bell still goes off and it sounds like coins hitting the tray. Isn't that funny how that works? And so what Berhe is trying to tell you is we have to have the mind of Christ because the enemy is looking for any spot in your life to find his way in there. And I always that's why I started this off with attitude. And I know we're out of time, but I want to again emphasize as we close tonight. That's why I started off with attitude because that is his goal is to reflect your attitude towards the wrong things. If he can make you think that somebody is mistreating you, okay, I don't care who it is. It'd be me, Sister Donna, Brother Michael. sister, hey, whoever, right? If they're convinced somebody's mistreating them, you think that impacts how they deal with people, right? If you think somebody's taking advantage of you, and I use this last illustration, I never forget. A long time ago, there's some stuff on in the church, and little Donna came to me and she said, "Dad, don't you know that they're taking advantage of you?" And I looked her right in the eye and I said, "Baby, trust Daddy when I tell you they are not taking advantage of me." But here's the thing, it feels that way. But how many know that you got to be strong enough to stand up against that? That's not what Brody is saying. Trust me on that one. That's never been an issue with me. But actually, I have to be careful not to go too far. But the thing about that was, it's like you have to decide: do you want to be right, or do you want to minister to somebody? That's a big difference. And like Brother Hay said, sometimes I back out of certain things because I know to deal with that person, I'm going to have an issue. Because whatever the reason, whatever's went on, all the things that have happened, how many know you have to pray through first before you step back into that arena? Because I don't care how spiritual you think you are, you just got to understand how this works. You're still a human being. That's why we have to have Jesus. That's why we can't give up. That's why we got to look at people with different eyes. And sometimes we have people that show up at church we hadn't seen for a long time. Uh, You know, it hadn't been too long ago, about 5, 6 months ago, maybe not even that long, maybe two or three. A lady came, and this is exactly what she told Brother Hank, because you know how I always try to greet people. And I knew her when she walked in. And this is what she said: "I can't believe you're still here." I said, "What do you mean by that?" I go, "Yeah, I'm still here. Do you mean, did I die?" I mean, there are people who think I died, but I haven't yet. At least way it's not according to the paper. But I look at that, and I told her, I said, "But I'm not the pastor, Brother Michael is." And I know why that person said that. Okay. But it's up to Brother Hay to treat them the way that I need to, even if they got a bad attitude, right? I mean, I could have been really offended and said, "Excuse me?" Been one of them guys who go, "Really?" but but the best way, like Brother Hay said, if you're going to solve these issues in your life, get the mind of Christ and understand that He washed, and this is what I want you to take with you. He washed the feet of Judas just hours before he kissed him on the cheek and betrayed him. You ever thought about that? And so we get in our little corners because we want to be right, right? And we get in trouble. Yeah, he did. Yep. And think about how much he knew what was going to happen, but he still submitted himself to that humility. And so when we come up with all these excuses, we can't do that, we can't do this, we whatever, be careful. Okay? You got to get the mind of Christ. Don't try to do it in yourself. Or hey, has to get attitude adjusted every once in a while. Sometimes I have to adjust attitudes. Right, Tanya? She ain't listening. Huh? But anyway, I just want you to know that it's okay to be human, and we all mess up. Really. Yep. Isn't that amazing? I didn't know that. Have you? I've never heard that, but it's important. Okay. If you want to shut that off, Mike, we'll go ahead and be dismissed. If you stand with me, if you have offering, you can just put it in the basket.